And welcome back. This is your man Warrior. This is another patron roster review, and this is Darth Marr. Now, Darth Marr has been kind of following my four-pillar system a little bit, but he's also dolphined out. He's been playing for about 8 months, and he's at about a 1.4 million GP, which I've been playing for 5 months on my alt, and I'm at a 1.2. So he's about 300,000 higher than me in 3 months additional, which means he's about right on track for being that. And in the dolphin aspects is where he's been able to get the other characters very specifically, fine-tuned over the last 8 months into gear 12. So the dolphining out a little bit has helped him get the current meta, which is pretty awesome, helps him stay in the top of the arena. And then his fleet arena, not super competitive. He's able to use these ships to help him stay kind of in the top 20. So pretty good there. His inventory looks pretty good, but remember this is 1.2 or 1.4 million GP after only 8 months. So it kind of is going to drop off pretty fast, pretty quick. So you can kind of see as we go down, there's quite a few gear 11, gear 10, really hyper focused. And then it drops to gear 9. And then you can see down here, it just basically drops completely off. He does have a Commander Luke Skywalker and a Grandmaster Yoda. And you're like, oh my goodness, why is he not using them? And also, Han Solo. And it's like, oh my goodness, he's got all these 7-star characters, Darth Nihilus, Night Sisters, Range Trooper, General Kenobi 6-star. And he did tell me he's kind of shooting for a Jedi list, so to speak, Jedi list team compositions. Now, obviously, he knows he needs to get a Jedi Knight Revan and the characters associated with Jedi Knight Revan. So there's a few of these characters he's going to have to develop, and he knows that, but he's not a fan of Jedi, and he's got a lot of characters down here that are really great. So, he's going to have to focus eventually on some of these guys like of course, some of the rebels that are down here and, some of the Old Republic that are down here. So anyway, looks pretty good at the top. I mean, he's got a really great focus on some really important tunes. He's gear 12, quite a few really good ones. His primary objective with this video is really to get Heroic Sith Raid ready, and he kind of wanted to know what teams. Now, I can kind of give you the teams that you can build now with what you have because you don't really have a whole lot. So I'm going to give you a few teams. You can kind of decide which phase you want to use the team. In fact, you might want to use all 4 teams in each phase to determine how much you can get from each team in each phase and to decide, which team you're going to place into which phase. And hopefully you'll be able to do some damage in each phase and contribute in a Sith raid. But we're going to start kind of with your most powerful team to start, and then we'll go down the route. And then what we'll do is we'll then talk about, after we talk about what you actually have right now and what you can use, we'll then go into kind of the 3 top teams you should be focused on developing for this raid. So no surprise here, this is basically your arena team. Your Sith Empire team looks awesome, and you can use the Darth Revan team in almost any phase, but I believe that you can get the most amount of damage from the Sith Empire in phase 2, and that's true with basically any team that you can just go to town and do a lot of attacks, really do very, very well in phase 2, but you can also use it other phases. In fact, you could use it in phase 4, kind of halfway through. It would work basically as good as phase 2, although you'll get slightly more damage out of phase 2 than phase 4. But the Sith Empire is something you've already really established for arena, so it would be absolutely important that you use this for the Heroic Sith Raid. Just a really great high damage team, especially with HK-47 in there, and then Darth Revan. He does crank up the damage with the stacks that he gets. Now, bounty hunters work really, really well. You could use them in phase 2. They're actually pretty good in phase 3 as well. You can use them again in any phase you want, see which one you do better on, but I would recommend probably phase 3 since you would probably for now be using Darth Revan in phase 2. You could use them in phase 2 again, but the thing is you want to really contribute helping do damage in each of the 4 phases for your guild. If you put all your teams in phase 2, you may score the most in the millions of damage, but then you're not actually contributing to the completion in phase 3 or phase 4, which is really the hardest part for a lot of guilds to get through, is those last 2 phases. So to be a team player and a contributor, you could use something like this. The bounty hunters work really, really well. You've got Bosk, you've got Cad Bane, Dengar, Boba Fett, Jango. So it's a really great team. It looks like you've got Jango Zeta, so that's good. You're going to get his lead ability as well. So that's awesome. So the bounty hunters are kind of ready to go. You could use them. And like I said, probably use them in phase 3. Now, kind of going through your roster, I also found Empire's pretty solid. You've got TIE Fighter, Pilot, Grand Moff Tarkin, Vader, Thrawn, and Palp. And under Palpatine, Vader, Tarkin, and TIE Pilot are insane. They do tons of debuffs, which gives tons of turn meter to the team. And Thrawn is just a really, really great control piece. And so this team right here is basically ready to rock and roll. And you can use the Empire, like I said, in whichever phase you're going to want to use them in. But, phase 2, 3, or 4 are really, really great options. Phase 4, you could use it in the first half or the second half of it, just based on, what you have. I'd probably do the second half of phase 4 or phase 2 or phase 3. You can really do pretty good actually in phase 3 as well with this team. Don't expect to score an insane amount of damage, but expect this team to click pretty fast and be able to get quite a few topples in phase 3 if you decide to use them, just because of the mass AoE capabilities and taking out those sabers pretty quickly. And then the last team that's basically kind of ready, that you've got enough that you could go in, would be kind of a Rebels team, if you will. And one of the things is, if you look on the bottom here, you see your Commander Luke and Han Solo at 7 stars, level 1. Both of those characters are just insanely overpowered, and you've got them at level 1 with no investment in gear or anything. Those 2 characters, you're never going to regret developing. Even if you hate Rebels, you should still develop those 2 characters. They're going to work really well with Chewie when you end up getting Chewie, and you're going to be able to get Chewie because of your bounty hunters being so amazing. So it's inevitable, and that triumvirate, so to speak, the Luke, Han Solo, and Chewie, are really, really powerful. It's going to give you a hyper competitive edge in grand arenas, territory wars, territory battles, all sorts of stuff. And they can do insane amounts of damage in the Sith raid. And so if you really do care about the Sith raid, you're going to care about those 3 characters. But you've got Han and Luke right now. There's absolutely no reason to not go ahead and just throw them in your favorites and get them up, develop them out right now. Now that we've talked about kind of the teams you have developed and where you can kind of use them in the Sith raid, even though it's not optimal, so to speak, we're going to move over to a couple of teams. The top 3 teams I feel like you need to develop to really help you in like phase 1, potentially more damage in phase 2, and also phase 3/phase 4. And these are the highest damage dealing teams in the game. And since they're the highest damage dealing teams, they're the 3 teams you should be focused on for the Sith raid, because between the 3, you can get almost 20 million pretty easily. And that really should put you in the top 5 very easily in any guild that you're in. We haven't addressed phase 1 anyway, and really the number 1 best team for phase 1 has been and always probably will be Resistance. Now, I know that you don't have Jedi Training Rey yet, and this is why this is a team that I'm going to suggest you work towards and focus on. Jedi Training Rey, BB-8, which you don't have yet, and then R2-D2. You already have R2-D2 gear 10, so that's great. And then Finn. You're going to need Finn anyway, so you're going to have to develop him out just to get Jedi Training Rey. But this team works great. And then you can have a +1. That +1 could be Poe, could be Resistance Trooper, or it could be eventually C-3PO if you get your Ewoks up. Now, if you don't want to have to get your Ewoks up for C-3PO, and by the way, I eventually would, because C-3PO is one of those amazing legendary characters that makes Rebels and Resistance just pop. But let's pretend you don't want to do that right now. You could work on Resistance Trooper, a very easy character to kind of develop, get up, and you already have unlocked, so you could start gearing up. But bottom line, the Resistance right now with the reworked Finn that they reworked, you don't even need his Zeta. Jedi Training Rey, BB-8, R2-D2 +1 is still an insane team, anywhere from 4 to 8 million pretty consistently in phase 1, and will really help push your team through phase 1 of the heroic Sith raid. Now, I know you don't want to develop out your Jedi, but Jedi can work in phase 1 really well as well by a Grandmaster Yoda lead, or you can switch over to phase 2 and do a ton of damage. Yoda works well in phase 2 as well, and same with Jedi Knight Revan. And you said you definitely want to be Jedi-less except for a Jedi Knight Revan team. Now, because of that, you want Jedi Knight Revan because you know the competitive nature of the game and the need for Jedi Knight Revan to get Darth Malik, and that's really your end goal. But Jedi Revan is a insane offensive and defensive team. There are a couple of these guys you're definitely going to want to develop through completion, and one of them is Grandmaster Yoda and the other is General Kenobi. They absolutely, both of them, should be in your favorites and should get developed all the way to the top. Now, eventually you're going to get your Jedi Knight Revan and you're going to have to build a Jedi team, and it's going to consist of course, a couple of the Old Republic, which you don't currently have in here, which is going to be the Old Republic Jedi of Bastila and Jolie Bindo, and both of those will need to be developed for the purposes of Revan. And then, of course, with those two, Grandmaster Yoda, General Kenobi are the other two that you should probably be developing. Now, Hermit Yoda should be a sixth alternative that you develop out. Very rare character and very, very good for increasing damage output and resiliency on a team, especially for the raids. And if the rest of your team dies, he can disappear and actually be reused in another team in another phase. So I would highly recommend developing him out for this team for the Sith raid, because you can use him in multiple phases with multiple teams to increase resiliency and damage output, and then keep reusing him. So definitely you're going to have to focus on some Jedi, and the four I mentioned, the two that are not in here, which is your Bastila and Jolie Bindo, and then of course General Kenobi and Yoda. Those four plus possibly Hermit Yoda are definitely the five Jedi, even though you don't like Jedi, are the five Jedi that I would probably focus on. And then let's go to the last team that does the most damage, and that is Night Sisters. Now, I talked about Jedi Knight Revan, and he should be your number one first priority, and then Resistance probably after that, but because you've got a no P1 team. But Night Sisters can be used in P3, P4, and you could even use it at the end of P3 into P4 as kind of a transition team. And the Night Sisters are phenomenal. They do insane, and I mean insane amounts of damage. In fact, right now with Jedi Knight Anakin, there's that crazy solo in phase 3. So there is that, but obviously that will eventually get worked and go away. But the Night Sisters won't, and they'll continue to be a solid force to be reckoned with in phase 3 or phase 4. So I would highly recommend you develop out your Night Sisters for that massive damage output that they can create. Even a under-geared Night Sister team can still put out 2 to 4 million really pretty easily, even if you don't play them that well. So the damage output that you're going to get from these guys once they're maxed out and leveled up is really, really phenomenal. Now, obviously, you don't have Mother Talzin, and you want her, and then Old Daka, Asajj, Spirit, and Zombie. And Spirit would be better for PvP. Talia would actually be better for the PvE, which is the raid. I would have all 6 and then just replace Initiate with your Mother Talzin, and then develop them all out for the Sith raid, as well as being able to use them in, territory wars and Grand Arena. But these guys do a ton of damage, and if you develop out Resistance, your Jedi Knight Revan team, and your Night Sisters, those 3 new teams alone are going to do an insane amount of damage. And with your other 4 teams that you're using, you'll have mastered them and know exactly where to use them best. And by that time, you'll have 7 or 8 teams now doing damage, and you should very easily place in your top 3 for the Sith raid, even at the level that you're at. Now, I know the teams I've given you are kind of a long shot. Night Sisters, there's a lot to develop here, but you have to keep in mind this is the long haul. This is what you're focused on, right? You're focused on the Sith raid, so these top 3 teams are going to give you the best bang for your investment buck. And all 3 teams are usable on offense and defense for Grand Arena territory wars, so you can't go wrong with those. And then just keep in mind, remember that the Rebels, you definitely want to do Han Solo and CLS, get those guys leveled up, and when you unlock Chewie, take him up as well. He's going to be worth his weight in gold. All right, Darth Marr, you're doing really, really well. You've got a great start within the first 8 months. You've dolphined on the right things. If you're going to continue to dolphin, you know exactly which teams to do that for. And shout out again to Primal Coalition. What's up, you guys? And hope this roster review helps you well. If anybody has any suggestions for Darth Marr, leave them in the comments down below. Very specifically, any of the teams I suggested that he's already got developed, if you suggest a different phase than I'm suggesting, then tell him, let him know exactly which phase you think he'll have more success in. And as always, make sure you keep your gaming on. Warrior out.